Hi there, welcome to the Creative Pod, a podcast where we talk about photography, painting, and creative writing. If you're into any of these, then you come to the right place. All right, so in today's episode, we have a special guest and a very special friend of mine. I would like to welcome Sadat on the Creative podcast. Welcome, Sadat. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. Thanks a lot, Shashir. Thanks for inviting me for this interview.
Awesome. So, we are going to be talking about macro photography, and that is one area of photography which, if people really get into, it's a whole wide world. And I know that you're very passionate and very interested in macro photography. So, Sadat, in today's episode, I would be talking to you about that, and I would like to know more about your experience with macro photography, and more importantly, think about talking about this topic from a standpoint that there might be people who are interested but want to know more, or there are people who have no idea about macro photography. So from that standpoint, I would like to know about your experience, what brought you to macro photography. But before all of that, if you could give a brief intro for our listeners and viewers in the videocast, it would be great. So go ahead, Sadat.
Yeah. So my name is Sadat, and I have been into photography since 2011. So, like many photographers, my journey started with shooting flowers. So, in that process, I could get the beauty of a flower, and at the same time, because effort, I got into the macro photography because I shot the flower from a distance, and then I tried to go closer, and then when I went there, it was like I could see the vivid colors, the beauty of nature, in a flower.
So it was a whole new world for you.
Yeah, so that opened my macro journey. I also shoot wildlife. I love to go to the jungles and the national parks and take photos. That is my secondary passion. But if you ask me, the genre that I love the most in photography is macro.
Great. So that's an amazing and an interesting perspective that you have provided all of us. That you shot, took a picture of a flower, and you realized you're at a distance, and you went closer to it, and you found many different colors, and like I said, it was a different world that you saw there. If you were to describe macro photography in, say, a sentence, in simple terms, how would you put it?
So I would say macro photography is photographing a subject from up close and personal. So it's like you're going really close. It's called 1:1 ratio, wherein you can see one insect you're shooting, you'll see all the details about the insect. So that it's a very tiny insect, but you get so up close and personal that you feel it's full-sized,
like the size of a person standing in front of you, I believe.
Absolutely.
So what I gather from what you're saying is, macro photography is photographing things that are really small, and things that we miss just because of the fact that these things are so small, like insects and the inside of a flower. It's a whole wide world in itself. So why don't you delve into the first macro picture that you took, and what was so special about it?
Yeah, so my first macro subject was a common housefly. We have grown up seeing houseflies flying around. But and while growing up, our only intention was to squash it, right? We don't because it's a nuisance for us. So I shot it, and then when I saw the results, it was so beautiful. I mean, it has so many details, how it is, it has the legs, it has a compound eye, and it's so colorful. Actually, if you look at a photo of a housefly, common housefly, you will be amazed. You will be amazed that how could I have missed seeing such a beautiful thing, right inside your house.
So you actually found beauty in a common housefly, the way it looks, and the details intrigued you, and then you felt that, wow, this is something that I never knew. Like, that was a feeling.
Yeah. So I think the people I showed that photo to, even they had a similar response. Wow, what is this? I mean, I've not seen this. Then I said, this is a common house fly. I mean, you see it daily in your house. So it not only it not only invoked that kind of a response in me. It also intrigued the people who saw my photo.
Beautiful. Yeah. So tell us this, Sadat. I have a mobile phone, and that's the only camera that I have with me. Can I get into macro photography? Like, what can I shoot and call it macro photography with a phone?
With the phone alone, it may be quite limited, but there is an attachment available. It's called a macro lens, which it's a very tiny.
Oh, those attachable lenses that come on. Okay, I got it. Yeah.
Yeah. So recently I got one, and I took a photo of my sister-in-law, and sister-in-law's eye, actually, one eye, and it was quite good. And so that is there's a bare minimum that you can do with your mobile. So
all right.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing is that if you have a mobile phone, that alone may not help you get really close into the subject. So you might need special attachable lens kind of thing. And I've seen quite a few of those on some of the e-commerce websites. So we have to spend a little bit of money to really get into macro photography, if at all, even if it's with a phone. But let's say let's say I have a DSLR. Can I get into macro photography? I understand DSLR are having interchangeable lenses. So what lens would one use for macro?
Yeah, so we do have specialized macro lenses which give you a 1:1 perspective, and there are lenses that will give you more than 1:2, or I have one lens which gives 1:5. That is the 5 times magnification of actual size of the subject. So, but yeah, these.
Let me pause you there. When you say 1:5, it means it is magnifying something 5 times.
Yes.
Am I right?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah. So, but these are quite expensive. There are, multiple other ways which one can start off with macro photography. First thing is there's something called an extension tube. Before talking about extension tube, let me talk about focusing distance. Every lens has a focusing distance. That is a minimum focusing distance. In case of macro photography, this focusing distance becomes a liability, because you can't go closer to the subject. You can't take a macro shot, but then the extension tube will reduce the focusing distance. So if you see, there's a set of extension tubes. Typically it's 12 mm, and then some 25 mm, and then 36 mm, I guess. So it comes in a set of 3.
So let me ask you this. I understand that there are some lenses which are specifically designed and built for macro photography. So the option that you're providing right now, does it apply to lenses which are built for macro photography, or I can use my normal prime lens or maybe your kit lens and attach these tubes to those lenses and use it for macro? So what is the use case for extension tube?
So this is this option I told you, the extension tube that can be used without any specialized macro lens, but I use my macro lens plus the extension tube to get more magnification of the subject.
So that means I can use the extension tube on any lens and attach it to a DSLR, and effectively it is just helping me to get even closer to the subject. Am I right? Okay.
Yes. And for a beginner photographer who wants to delve into macro photography, so instead of spending $600 for a macro lens, so they can get a set of extension tubes for probably $100 or less.
There's a tip of going macro on the budget. So if you have a normal kit lens, I could use an extension tube and still manage to do macro photography and still get away with it, I believe.
Absolutely, and the results that you will get will, astonish you. It's so beautiful, actually.
Awesome. So that while we have extension tubes I have heard of something called a lens reversal ring. What is that all about? Have you heard of that?
It is one more option that you have. Like for example, whatever lens you have, the kit lens, including the kit lens, you can just there's an adapter available for specific models. Like for Canon, there's a separate one, and for Nikon it'll be another one, and Sony it'll be another one. So you fix the adapter, and then you you reverse the lens, and then you can fix it there. So
so basically what it is doing is it is reversing my existing lens, so I can reverse the lens and attach it to my camera, like how I would attach any other lens to the correct.
But it needs a little bit of practice, because you cannot have the f-stop, right? F-stop cannot be controlled here, so it has to be manually controlled.
Got it. So it's completely manual, no autofocus, no automatic aperture control. You're pretty much, you should know what you're doing basically.
Yeah, if you buy a decent quality extension tube, right? There you don't need to set the f-stop manually. You can do it from the camera itself. You can select your f-stop, and I'll tell you.
So an extension tube a good extension tube could allow us to still have automated controls of the lens.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, that's perfect. So that actually solves a lot of possible issues. But tell us more about your experience further into this job.
Yeah, so there are a few qualities that you need to be a good macro photographer. This is apart from having your gear. I mean, whatever lenses and cameras you need.
So beyond the camera and the lenses, personally, what else as a skill you should be having is what you're saying, right?
Yes. So first up, you need to have a lot of patience, because these tiny subjects will not stand still for you to take the photo. So you have to struggle a lot. They are
not going to pose for you.
Yeah, they will definitely not. So I had shot one jumping spider, and it kept on jumping. I had a tough time following it, and
that's the name.
So I took around 20-30 shots. Out of that, only one or two I got decent ones.
Wow. That's a lot of effort.
Yeah, that's a lot of effort, and that is actually a moderate success. I have been to some places where I tried to shoot macro subjects for hours together and didn't get a single shot. I'll tell you why.
A lot of patience.
So I'll tell you why. Because one aspect of macro photography is that because you're very close to the subject, there's a lot of shake there. I mean, it'll be almost like it's like a pendulum. It'll be like oscillating like a pendulum, and you have to really control you should have a very steady hand.
So what you're saying is when we are so close to a subject, even our breathing might sort of result in camera shake.
It does.
Wow. So using special tripods would be something that you would suggest? What do you use?
I typically do not use tripod for moving objects. I do it. I take it handheld, because you cannot set up a tripod. By the time it'll be gone. I mean, it's a small. So
that's a good one.
Yeah. So I'm coming to the second trait. Apart from patience, that is actually you should have a good eye. You should. They're so tiny that you always tend to miss it. So if you go and observe closely, you'll see one tiny insect in one corner just below the leaf. So you have to spot it, and then that's the first thing. If you don't spot it, you cannot take the photo. So that's
when you say that you should have a good eye, are you referring to eyesight, or just that you should have an eye for photography, or you should be having a very attentive state of mind to spot your subject? Like, what are you referring to?
Yeah, I mean, eyesight is important, but that is you don't need a specialized eyesight or something. It's like you need to be attentive the whole time. It's like meditating. Okay. It's like meditating for that period. I'm looking for a subject. I'm looking for an interesting insect somewhere in this bush, or in the tree, or in the vicinity. So you should be able to look around. It is similar to bird photography, where you should be able to spot the bird first.
it's like meditating, right? So what happens when one meditates? You're like completely focused into one single thing, and you sort of go with it. So what I am understanding from what you're saying is you should know what you are trying to get a picture of. You have to keep looking out for that particular subject, and when you find it, you have to be able to focus and get your picture.
Yeah.
Am I seeing this correctly?
Absolutely. So all the techniques of taking a photo will come only when you spot it and you get a good subject, right?
So you got to find the subject first to take a picture of.
Yeah, then the challenge, begins. Yeah. So coming back to the trait, it's not a trait actually. The third thing that can affect a macro photography is the light. You need to have.
Yes, I was about to ask you about lighting.
Yeah, you need a lot of light because as you go closer, the lens covers all the light, and sometimes you're almost touching the subject. At that point you need some additional light. Otherwise it should be in full bright sunlight. But at the same time, if it's bright sunlight, the insects will not come out. Yeah, the best time.
Do you use any special lights?
Yeah, so I have a special flash where I attach it to the front of the lens, and then it'll illuminate the subject. So
that means it's kind of like a flash, but more designed towards the requirements of macro photography.
Yes. You can also use your normal flash. Which
the one on the camera or the other bigger ones that come separately?
No, on the camera. No, you can buy a flash unit actually, a separate flash unit.
Okay.
So it's like for a beginner photographer, you don't need all these. You should try to shoot in natural light. But like me, every photographer, you also know about it. So the more we delve into it, we tend to improve, and then we need to buy more equipment, right? So it happens that way. Yeah,
so let me ask you this, Siddharth. Let's say one of our listeners or viewers is interested in macro photography, and so far what they have learned is that you need to be very patient. It's ideal if you have a DSLR. If you have a normal lens, you may have to buy special equipment to use that lens for macro. If not, a proper macro lens could be used. And then when it comes to lighting, you could use sunlight if that's possible. If not, a normal flash that you could buy separately can also be used. But beyond all of this, what should one do to improve their macro photography?
The key part is practice and more practice. So I tell you,
no shortcut for hard work, is it?
Yeah, no shortcut for hard work, especially in macro photography. Sometimes you get lucky, but you get lucky only because you practice a lot, and then you're getting the shot because of your practice. And when you are starting macro photography, right, you should be ready for a lot of disappointing shoots. It's not that you failed a few times and then you give up. No, you cannot give up, because after 4 hours of effort, when you get that one shot that people say, wow,
that's the cherry on the cake.
Yeah, it happened with me for quite a few times. I thought, oh my god, why am I doing this? See, I'm an IT guy, and whole week I work, and weekend I get to rest, and I'm spending here in the jungle. Why? What for?
And then also there is no photo worth taking back.
Yeah. So at the end of it, when you get one shot, then you get the motivation back for your next 4 shoots.
Right.
That is how.
So what I'm getting from you is there's a lot of you have to be very patient, and it's not that easy, but it's really worth it.
The challenge is shooting the moving subjects, right? For macro, you don't need to start there. You can start with some objects in your house which doesn't move, which is not challenging. So you can practice your focusing and all there at your home. So you don't need to go out.
So Siddharth, when you're saying that, I have one more question. Now let's say, or let me put it in this way. What level of photographic knowledge or using a DSLR should someone be to get into macro photography? Let's say I bought a DSLR right now. I have zero idea of how a DSLR works, or what are the nuances or basics of photography using a DSLR, can I still get into macro, or should I take my time, learn the fundamentals first, understand my camera first, and then get into macro photography?
It's always good to know the fundamentals. For example, how to get an exposure right. So that is common for all types of photography, right? So you need to know what shutter speed to use, what f-stop to use, which lens to use. Like when it comes to macro, you can't use too many lenses, right? You have only one or two choices. But I'm talking about in general. In general, you should know what focal length you should use, and then more importantly, the f-stop, right? It will give you the depth of field.
So the f-stop, you're referring to the aperture, basically.
Aperture, yes, aperture. And I mean, for macro, what happens is because we are shooting very close, what happens is the depth of field is very tiny. It's like unbelievable. It will be like one
very thin, very shallow depth of field.
Very shallow depth of field. So you need to use a bigger number, bigger aperture. I mean, smaller aperture, bigger number. That means you should use something like f10, f8 minimum. Then
so you're saying to shoot macro photography, I should have like something like an f8 or an f10 aperture to help with that depth of field and get more in focus.
Yeah, otherwise you may end up having only the eyes in focus and the rest of the body is blurred. So
so it looks like it's really important to figure out your camera first and understand the basic fundamentals of photography before even getting into macro, because like you said, your that bug is not going to wait for you to figure out the settings and then pose for you. It's going to go about its own day. So you have to be very clear about what you're doing and how to use your equipment to actually even get into photography.
Absolutely. So I can tell you, I've been shooting macro for the past 6-7 years. Even after so much of practice, I get successful shots only 20% of the time. I have to delete most of the photos. So that is how difficult it is.
That is when you're shooting bugs and insects, or is that the case generally across when it comes to macro photography?
Yeah, see, macro photography is mostly about the bugs, and they are always mobile. I mean, most of the time, and they are very difficult to focus on. And they're it's I mean, it's like, see, in any photography this is a problem, but in macro it is magnified. As the image is magnified, the problems are magnified as well. So
it looks like if anyone wants to get into macro, you better get a hang of your equipment and your fundamentals first, do a lot of practice, and then start experimenting with this genre. But that being said, I would also say any of our subscribers, don't get discouraged thinking, oh god, this seems like a lot of effort. See, anything special or anything that ups your game of photography is going to entail a lot of effort and practice, and that's true for even portraits, landscapes, weddings, you name it. So overall, so that it's we are glad to actually have you on the show. In closing, how would you wrap up macro photography, and what do you think you could talk more about, and we could do a follow-up episode and delve deeper into those details?
Yeah, so like you said, I explained so many things about you need to do this, you need to do that, but let me tell you, don't be discouraged. If you put on the effort, that is well worth it. Once you get one shot of a fly, that people will say, wow, that is enough to motivate you. So my request to you is do not get discouraged easily, and keep trying at it. And macro photography is beautiful, and once you try, once you get a few shots, you will fall in love with that, and then you will not you'll always,
there's no turning back.
No turning back. Absolutely. You'll buy all the equipment, and you will become a good photographer. That world is something really different, because that is something unusual.
It's a whole new world, basically.
It's a whole new world, and we can't even imagine, because we are so big, we don't see those beautiful subjects from their standpoint, from their size, right? So here we are getting so it's a beautiful world. So
awesome.
keep at it, and soon you'll improve and you will enjoy the joys of shooting macro.
Beautiful. So that's really nice that you put it, because there is a lot of effort, but once you really get your first few shots, you realize that all that time and all that practice really was worth it. So I'm sure after listening to what you said, especially your first photograph of a fly, people would be interested to see what pictures you have been able to shoot from all these years. So I believe you would be able to share some of those pictures with us.
Sure, I can send you a link which
perfect. Yeah. So I would link Sadat's sample pictures in the description. Please go ahead and check out his pictures. But Sadat is also beyond macro. He does quite a bit of photography in other genres, and I would request Sadat to also spare some time and talk about those genres as well. We Sadat and myself essentially are acquaintances. We met first time when we were shooting a live theater, and we both shared our love for photography, and that's how we became friends. Went on many rides together and have taken a lot of pictures of places. So there's a lot more for all of us to take away from Sadat. So look forward to more of such topics. We spoke of camera gear, we spoke of aperture, we spoke about composition, and even getting your exposure right. So there are a lot of jargon here, and if any of us want to know more about these things or want us to have an episode into those details, I would love to get into that. But it's good always to hear from our subscribers and listeners and viewers. So please reach out, tell us what you want to hear about or talk about and learn, and that's where we would give our time and make sure that you come out with this podcast learning a thing or two about photography. So that being said, thanks so much, Sadat, for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you on the episode, and we look forward to more of you in the coming few weeks and months.
Yeah, take care, man. The pleasure is mine, and I would love to be a part of this podcast in future, sharing my experiences with photography. And thanks for having me in the show.
My pleasure, man. Take care, brother. Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye. See you.
Alrighty then, that wraps up the episode, and I hope you enjoyed it. You know what they say, the more the merrier. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel and share it among like-minded people. This was the Creative Pod podcast. That's all for now.